What's up, YouTube? It's your girl, Chicago Landie, and I made a big mistake. So, this is my very first YouTube video, right? Done with intention. And I was mitigating a lot of issues, and I decided to release a podcast first, thinking I could later edit video for that. My bad. Okay, my bad. It was not as easy as I thought it was, but I still want you guys to be able to hear what I said because I think that it's a good precursor to this relationship we're about to engage in. So, I am going to provide you the audio, okay, of that podcast, and I will never do that again because I've literally spent a month trying to fix that, and either I'm not smart enough or no, it ain't that. I couldn't figure it out. Okay. So go ahead, listen to this, go wash your dishes, do what you got to do, let that play. And then I will make sure for the next video, I don't do that again. I really appreciate you guys checking me out and subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss the next videos when I fix all the errors I faced with this one. Follow me on social media. I'm on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can find me at Chicago Landie or anything related to the channel you will find at Hey from the Bay on Instagram. Again, thank you. I hope you enjoy it. What's up, everybody? This is Chicago Landie, and you just tuned in to Hey from the Bay. This episode has been brought to you by Chicago Landie, by me, because I don't have any sponsors yet. However, big up to Coachy Soulstar for the intro music. I said something like, I don't really know what's going on, but, this doesn't really have anything to do with me. So if I can just get my $5 and, I could be out the way. And then he took the gun and he pointed it at me. And he put it really close to my face. And he said, if you don't shut the fuck up, I'm going to send you home in a different way. I probably should have made a theme song. But oh well, here we are. So this is a very first episode of this podcast. And I want to begin immediately by setting a tradition. And in that tradition, I will be profiling a missing Black or brown woman or child that is missing so that we can continue to shed light on it and keep it in the forefront of our thoughts so that these people can be found. So in this first episode, I want to profile a case that I think is really important to me. I remember it well, even though I was a little young. And that's the story of two missing sisters from the Chicago area, Tianda and Diamond Bradley. These two sisters went missing on July 6, 2001. These two babies were 10 and 3 years old. Tianda was 10, Diamond was 3. And they were last seen in their home, okay? This case is still active, and cold case investigators are still investigating it. These two sisters, their mom went to work. They left home. They were left home. And they left a note saying that they were going to the store and that they, were going to the park and that they would be back. And they were never heard from again. If you have any information or have seen anything or anyone that has anything to do with this case, I implore you to call 1-800-THE-LOST, and that is 1-800-843-5678, and report any information that you have on this case. So, as I said, I am Chicago Landie, and I, the premise of this podcast essentially is that I am a Gen Xer, an empty nester who went back to school. My son went to college, and I reached heights that no one that I know of in my family has ever reached, and didn't know what to do with myself. So I accepted an offer for a fellowship in the Bay Area to study education and become a teacher. And I have to say, um, this journey in the Bay Area has not been going as anticipated. Um, so, in order for this to make sense, I should probably tell you a little bit about what my life was like in Chicago, and then um, tell you how that correlates to what my life is like here in the Bay Area. Okay. So, I was born in when I was living in the Cabrini Green housing projects when I was born, and my parents were teenagers, and my mom had me at a hospital that doesn't even exist anymore. It's condos. It was Grant Hospital, and I believe it's on the corner. It was on the corner of Larrabee and Armitage, if I'm not mistaken. I've been raised in the ideas about how my mom walked in labor from 1340 North Larrabee to, I'm going to guesstimate the address to be 2000 North Larrabee, which is about 7 blocks in labor with her friend. Due to some circumstances that we can get into in another episode, my grandfather bought an apartment building, and I was raised in Humboldt Park in Chicago a few years later. I grew up there in the 80s, and it was, they literally called it the Wild West. It was a neighborhood that had a lot of Latin kings, but and I don't pretend to understand how gangs are ran, but I do feel like the gangs that I grew up with in that neighborhood were immensely different than the way gang organizations are operating today. In that, me as a child never understood how much danger I was in the middle of. When there was real imminent danger afoot, they would tell all of us kids to go in the house. They would buy us things from the corner store. I lived at the intersection of Whipple and Wabansia, which I understand is the epicenter of Latin Kings in Humboldt Park. And they would turn on our fire hydrants so that we can all cool down on a summer day. And they are an integral part of my memories of growing up in Summertime Shy. When I went to high school, it was always mandatory for me to go to school, right? I had no way out of that. But I realized shortly that my mom, who did not complete high school, she got a GED. She made it very mandatory that I go to college, but she hadn't actually saved for college. She did go to junior college, and she had a long career working in Cook County Hospital, Stroger Hospital, and she did model the behaviors of what it should look like for me as a student. And good practices and behaviors were instilled in me. However, there were some significant things that were not explained. So when I went to college, I had never really been in any situations where I felt in danger. To my knowledge now, I had been in great danger over a period of time. But I'm leading you up to a particular situation that sticks out in my mind. I was in college, and we were on Christmas break, and a friend from high school had moved to Riverdale.
And I was really eager to go visit her because I hadn't seen her in a while. And I went to hang out with her. And she had a little spat with her boyfriend, and I didn't realize that was happening. S- Full disclosure, I still struggle with a lot of my social awareness, right, and social graces and social cues. So I was not fully aware. And this was maybe one of 3 times I had been on the south side of Chicago without a parent on public transportation. So, needless to say, I did not need to be here. So as we were hanging out at 18 years old, we were trying to like get pizza and I don't know, alcohol or whatever. And don't do this at home, kids. And I only had about $5, $10 remaining, and they were short. And so they said that if I loaned them the money, her boyfriend specifically, if I loaned her the money, he would pay me back when he got home the next day on Sunday when he got home from church. In my naivete, I gave him the money, not knowing that they were in the midst of a spat. Now, the next day, we waited and we called and to see if he was home from church, and he was. And we went over to his house just a couple blocks away, and we walked through the door, and I immediately noticed something was afoot. He had still had his church clothes on, and he was drinking a beer in a glass bottle. And when I realized he had a gun in his hand, I didn't know what to do. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, my fight or flight is not the best. It's not fine tuned. I didn't know what to do. And early on, I just thought, like, whatever is going on, I don't really want to be a part of it. I had no life experience on how to manage these types of situations. And so I said something like, I don't really know what's going on, but, this doesn't really have anything to do with me. So if I can just get my $5 and, I could be out the way. And then he took the gun and he pointed it at me. And he put it really close to my face. And he said, if you don't shut the fuck up, I'm going to send you home in a different way. Now, I have not decided if that's my hero origin story or my villain origin story. But that was a turning point for me in my life. I was wearing this really ridiculous outfit because it was 1998. And I had a mini skirt on in January. And I had these boots that I loved so much because they felt like sweaters, but they were like really clunky and big. My mom hated them. She called them like Herman Munster boots or something. I was really balanced back then. Gravity was still my friend. But they were ridiculous in an emergency. So she and her boyfriend started to talk, and she didn't say anything to me. She didn't look at me and comfort or be like, I'll get us out of this or anything. I didn't get anything from her. And I realized quickly that I'm going to have to save myself. So she started to talk to him and reason with him, and he started arguing with her, and they started to argue. His mom was in the next room. I could hear her TV playing. She never came once to see what was going on. So at some point in their argument, it got kind of heated. They both were super engaged. And I slowly creeped out of that bedroom. And then I hit those stairs. And then I got out of that door, down the stairs of his porch. And it's like, I can see it in my head right now, right? I remember running down a street. I don't know what street. I think it was 137th. And I ran until I got to Indiana. Now, I have no idea the street, but I thought I saw it before, right? I turned at the street, Indiana. I turned left because in my mind, I'm trying to figure out which way is north. I lived on the north side. Okay. And if this is the type of things that was happening on the south side, leave me out. Now, this is not to admonish the entire south side of Chicago or the south suburbs, but I was unfamiliar with this territory. And so, I didn't know what to do. But that was a street I remember seeing on my way in. And I know that going left was going north. When I got to that turn, they made it to the porch. And they were yelling my name. And I never stopped, right? So I'm running down Indiana, right? And I don't know where I am, what street I am, any businesses nearby or anything. But I did see a payphone. And because it was the 90s, like I used to do this thing where I would make a phone call from my cell phone. I had a cell phone. It was like $1 a minute, pay as you go. But it was dead. And so I would make a phone call, but have it built to my house. I think it's called a person-to-person call. I don't even think that exists anymore. But that's what I did. And I was calling my mom, basically collect, and she would not accept the charges. She would not accept those charges. And I think this was a time like I had done it so many times that she was just like, no, I'm not accepting these charges. And I'm yelling over the operator. I'm like, please accept the call. Please, this is an emergency. It's an emergency. And she would not accept those charges. I tried a few times and she didn't. So I just kept walking. I kept walking north on Indiana. And I didn't realize that it had gotten dark as I was walking. And I was running out of road, actually. So at this point, I think I'm approaching 128th, something like that. And there was a payphone, and there was like some factory or something in front of me, and bushes across the street. I picked up the payphone. I had tears in my eyes. I called 911, and I said, I was with my friend, someone attacked me, he pulled a gun on me, and I'm here at this corner and I need help. I can't get home. I don't know what to do. And there's somebody in the bushes across the street saying things like, hey girl, hey, hey, hey you. I just cried. And they said, okay, stay put. We'll be there in 7 minutes. So about 15 minutes later, I don't know, because I didn't have a watch, but I did wait a long time. And the voices in the bushes got louder. And I had decided that despite the way I was dressed in this mini skirt and this boots and such, that I'm just going to have to walk. So I walk around this, whatever this is, right? This monument. There's no sidewalks at this point, right? I go around it and I'm walking down the street and I'm like, I can't walk to the north side. You're being ridiculous, right? And so I decided that I had to try to get attention from the cars and ask for help. So I stopped walking. I held out my thumb, right? As I've seen in movies, right? We all seen these hitchhike movies, but we also know about Ted Bundy. And so 2 cars stopped. And I really just went to the one that was closest. And I said, please don't kill me. And he said, if you thought I was going to kill you, you can still get in a car. And I said, I'm having an emergency. and I kind of gave a little spiel of what was going on. And he was like, damn, that's fucked up. Are you okay? I said, yeah, well, relatively, relatively. But I can't get home. I don't know how to get home. And he said, well, I can take you to 95th and the Dan Ryan, which was the closest train station, right, to take me north. And I said, but he took my money. I don't have the money to get on the train. And I think the stranger, maybe he didn't have the money, right? But maybe he was just like unsure if my story was true and that I was worthy of this grace, right? It's a crazy world out there. He was like, dang, you don't have nothing? I said, no, I don't have nothing. He was like, well, what if I gave you $2, right? Because I think back then you can get on the train and have a transfer for $2. But there were so many transfers involved in this commute that I think I needed to more than 3 rides. So he was like, dang, I can't take you to the north side. That's too far. He was like, you don't know anybody on the south side? I said, I know one person, but I couldn't quite remember. My friend from college who lived on 93rd and Woodlawn, because I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. uh, the only other person I knew was my ex-boyfriend. And we had just broke up. And I knew it was going to come off as wild, me showing up at his door with this crazy story. I really didn't want to go, but it was the only place that I knew. And I think he lived like 127th, just off of Hosted, a few blocks off of Hosted. And we found the house. I think the guy, I wish I remembered his name. So if you hear this out there and you remember picking me up, thank you immensely. I don't know how I would have got out of that situation. And I owe you big. So, after a series of events, I did make my way home. My mom came and got me. But I never forgot that situation, and I tried my best to keep myself out of trouble since then. I wasn't always successful, and I do feel like that's a story for another day. But what I did was take that experience, and when I was later married and I had my son, I tried to keep him as safe as possible. We raised him in Wicker Park, Chicago, which is a hipster, affluent neighborhood. And my son got to have all the trappings of normalcy and, I guess the upper echelons of coolness, normalcy, I guess. I don't know. Where's the intersection of cool and normal? I don't know. But he had a pretty good childhood in my opinion. I did my best. I tried my best. You got a mom who works in corporate, and for a financial institution, I won't say on this, but his dad owned a comic book store, and life is good. And eventually, I separated from my husband, and my son went to college. I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. No idea, right? I realized that I had lived my entire life trying to take good care of my son, and I didn't do very much for my own personal development as a person, as a woman of color, as a Black woman. And I needed to work on that. So I went to an Old Faithful, right? I could have worked out, right? Took yoga, right? But instead, I went back to college because I had done so much college over the years. It was the only thing I knew. I just wanted to study something else. I was working in HR and I wasn't really happy. And as I took that program, I realized I didn't want to work in HR anymore. It made it grueling to take those classes when I made that decision. So, I believe it was in December of 2023. I had done so much research and I had joined organizations that I knew nothing about in my first round of going to college. And I started to realize that after college, after like undergraduate, people be like going to grad school and reach higher heights. You don't even have to study the same thing in grad school. I never even considered grad school, like not for real. So I decided that I was going to go to some schools and continue my path in psychology. You know, that's what I got a degree in, and I was like, maybe I could be a research psychologist, right? And get some get some answers to some questions, right? About the way people act, about relationships, you know. I kind of was like really, really sitting with myself and thinking about people, right? We were in the pandemic, human behavior, the whys. You know, there's not very many answers to a lot of questions in this world. I want to seek the answers to the questions that have answers. So I applied, and I had a really good GPA. I applied for UCLA, Columbia, um, you know, schools that I heard were like really good schools that had programs and what I wanted to study. I understood the social capital that comes with going to a named school. And so I applied to these schools. I had ensured that I had 3 recommenders for each school, one of which was my old supervisor, who had always promised me overtly, even despite her continuously asking me if I watched The Wire and her dog's name after a character. And you don't watch The Wire? No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I don't watch The Wire. For obvious reasons, I'm sure she thought that I watched The Wire because I'm a Black person. And I think that she thought that she was okay because she watched The Wire and she's really into The Wire and, you know, had traveled in sub-Saharan, whatever. Anyway, she did not complete my recommendation. And when I realized she had not completed it, I was devastated. I was devastated. But I'm going to say, and I'm not a very extremely religious person, but I do love Jesus, right? It is a conscious, intentional act. And I do think that when God closes the door, he opens a window, baby, because I was so upset about that situation, right? Boo-hooing in my Cheerios. And I got a message from a guy for the grad program that I'm currently in. I didn't take it very seriously, right? The spiel was basically like, do you want to come to the Bay? Do you want to get a grad degree and become a teacher, get a teacher certification and teach in the Bay Area? And I was like, oh, I'll talk to him after the holidays. And I literally delayed that conversation. I didn't take it that serious because I was also considering the fact that, like, I have a child in college. I have no way of getting that child through college. Well, he got a scholarship, but still, like, I still need to be financially available to support him. And so I was not understanding how I was going to pay for grad school. So that probably informs why I delayed calling him back. And so I called him back in January. And I didn't know anything about the Bay Area. All the research I had ever done was on Los Angeles. I really came into this super blind, and that's my bad. Because I didn't know that Oakland and San Francisco and San Leandro and Hayward, all of those cities, I didn't know that they were in Northern California and that there's a completely different temperature here. Didn't know any of that. I think all I knew about the Bay Area was MC Hammer and E40 and Too Short. I didn't even realize that all that stuff I heard about the Black Panthers, that was the Bay Area. You know? And I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit that, but it's true. I'm gonna give you the good and the bad and the ugly. And that is something I'm not proud of. But it turns out that I knew a lot about the Bay. I just didn't know it was the Bay. Um, so here I am, and I do feel like my school did not support me thoroughly with answering all my questions, and I think it's more important that I would say that I had unknown unknowns. So I didn't know the questions I should have been asking, and as a result, I missed a deadline that was tantamount to me. I mean, I'm on a leave from grad school, and that's how I have the capacity to engage in this type of media with YouTube and my podcast. But that their loss is my gain, and I will resume school in January, and I can't wait. What was also lost is the security of my financial supports. So my situation is very different today. Okay. I think also what has benefited me in this experience is that I am forced to like kind of sit with myself and my feelings in my own place, listen to myself. And I think it's really important, as much as I want to be able to move the way I used to move, I realize I'm older and my discernment meter is different. When I first moved to the Bay, I had a roommate, right? I was living with a roommate. And after some time of creating certain traditions, I felt secure enough sometimes to go to a bar over on Lake Shore. And I like it because it was like piano karaoke. And I would never be brave enough to sing, even though I love karaoke. And I could do that. Anytime I can get a person to go with me, I would be like, hey, let's go over here. There's a couple times I went out to dinner, things like that. But I live in a different neighborhood now by myself. So recreating those securities, right, those traditions, it's been difficult for me because I haven't had a lot of hand holding in this process. I didn't even realize I needed a little hand holding in this process. Now I'm going to give you full disclosure. This conversation is inspired. It was inspired by a conversation I had at work today. So right now I'm working as a substitute teacher, and I'll leave it there. I'm a long-term sub, so I work every day, right? I show up every day. But I do feel like I'm in the capacity of a teacher because more often than not, I have a class to teach. I have students that I interact with. I'm not like just sitting in a classroom, office waiting to be called, right? And so I have students, I lesson plan. I haven't even been finished taught how to do this. I don't know how I'm doing it, but it's like, it's kind of like, how do they say, feast or famine, right? So you learn how to do things from doing. And honestly, it's the best teacher for me. But my regret is that me being at school is the only social interaction that I have. I was having this conversation with my my colleagues, and I was saying, like, I don't really go out. I don't go anywhere. And they're like, you need to go out. You need to go do stuff. And I'm like, yeah, no. They're like, why not? And I said, I'm scared. The truth of it is, like, I'm kind of scared because I have to build that tradition again. And I don't have the same supports that I had when this began. So starting over is so brutal. I have a tattoo on my wrist that says Lady Lazarus. And Lady Lazarus is a poem by Sylvia Plath. When people see it, they ask me what it means, and I tell them, when they hear the word Sylvia Plath, those who know, if you know, they only know one thing about Sylvia Plath. And even if they don't know anything about Sylvia Plath, like a key indicator of what this tattoo means is about Lazarus, right? And I think that this was symbolic for me. And the reason I got the tattoo was when I was coming out of my married state. And I felt like I was living my life in revolutions, right? And constantly starting over and being reborn. But I have to admit that I'm a little tired of starting over. And I would love some stability. It's kind of like that stability that evaded me, in my youth. And I just don't feel at home here in the Bay Area yet. And it's hard to feel at home because I don't have like people that I'm meeting. I mean, I'm trying. I do go. I mean, I go out sometimes and I have met a couple people here. But when I call on them to say like, hey, let's go here or there, maybe I don't seem fun. I'm older, right? Than a lot of my counterparts that I encounter. I think that people my age are established. And so the things that I want to engage in, I mean, and I'm not talking about hanging from the chandeliers. I'm talking about like, let's go to a record store. Let's go have brunch. Brunch is my favorite meal of the day. I don't know. People are not into it. Mm-hmm. But my colleagues are saying that I should go out and interact with people and spend some time with myself. But I felt like they didn't understand what I was saying. Like, I think that people operate under the premise of their own privilege without understanding. I've been through stuff. I'm not saying they never been through stuff. I'm saying that they are operating from the premise not knowing that I've been through stuff. And it comes off as arrogant, right? I wish I lived a life where I had never been through stuff. Like just normal as fuck. But I have indeed been through stuff. And so that does make me a little hesitant to just take a chance. And I'm not talking about going to the grocery store. I'm not talking about going, you know what I mean, to run an errand. I'm talking about nightlife. I'm not even talking about the reputation that Oakland is violent or anything. It has nothing to do with that. And I honestly would feel this way no matter where I moved to. And I didn't get the chance to say that because I was being judged by my colleagues who thought I was operating off of a fear of a rumor that Oakland was unsafe. Not the case. Not the case at all. I would literally feel this way no matter where I was. So I leave you with this. As we extend support and advice to our friends and our families and our day-to-day lives, I want you to take a minute, take a beat, and consider if that advice that you're about to offer has a blind spot. Is it rooted in privilege and perspective? No matter what, I'm going to ask you to operate with grace in how we handle one another. We're not that kind to each other. And I wish we were. As always, I'm going to sign off, but as always, I am going to ask you to be kind, be gentle and patient with one another, and make good decisions every day. Hey, I'm not going to hold you, right? But if you made it this far, you are a real one. And I really appreciate you. Thank you. So I humbly ask that you go ahead and follow me on socials. I'm on YouTube and I have different videos there that don't work in this format. I'm also on all of the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky at Chicago Landie, or visit my website, heyfromthebay.com.